Hello again. Just a short video demonstrating the jointer off-centre turning jig that I used last week in my video. This item sold by Ruth Niles on her website, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. It's quite a short video. It just shows you what the jig can do, what it comprises, how you set it up, etc. If you want to see more of it, just ask, put something in the comments, but I will be using it more in projects over the next few weeks, so keep your eyes open and keep watching. Thanks. The jig itself was designed by a gentleman called Richard Joyner, I believe he's from Tampa in Florida, but the jig is sold through Ruth Niles on her website. I'll put the link for that in the description. It basically comprises of three sections. We have an all steel mandrel which has a threaded end. We have the backing plate, which has 8 off-centre, off-axis holes which mount to the mandrel, and a faceplate. Now the faceplate is indexed with 24 segments and can therefore rotate around the back plate, and this is held in place by anywhere between 2 and 4 thumb screws. And the jig's made of aluminium, other than the mandrel, which is steel, and it's very heavy. There's a big chunk of aluminium here. Now, as to whether you hold it on with 2 or 4 or 3 screws, Ruth Niles makes it quite clear on her website that it's acceptable to hold this with 2. I would say use your judgment depending on what you're turning. There are occasions when you have to remove 1 or more, because in order to get some of the more eccentric positions, I'll try and demonstrate here, the mandrel will touch onto the screws and not go home properly. So in this occasion I need to remove that screw. Personally, I try to keep 3 in place at any one time. It's worth noting that the screw thread on the mandrel on the 2MT taper, or 1MT depending on which size you have, can be used as a screw chuck in its own right. And in fact, this is a 9mm hole, or I think that's 11/32, drilled into any piece of wood, can then be turned straight onto the mandrel, and so you can use that as a screw thread. And originally the setup here was designed for turning bottle stoppers, and Ruth Niles bottle stoppers, which has a very extensive range, are designed to be threaded in this way, and then sections of the bottle stopper, which I've never made any bottle stoppers, but those are threaded together using the hole from the screw chuck. Makes it quite practical for holding small pieces. It's also worth noting that the mandrel itself, if I just knock this out using the Tommy bar, is threaded on the reverse so that you can use a drawbar, which I do highly recommend using. If you've a pass through on your lathe through the headstock, you can simply put the drawbar in and turn the mandrel onto the drawbar. Makes that very, very secure. There's no way that can be removed under any circumstances. If we mount the block on the mandrel, if the faceplate was attached on here, there's also a screw comes with the jig which would mount through the faceplate, allowing you once again to attach the block onto the screw, and then take that and do an off-centre turning. Alternatively, there are 4 screw holes so that you can take your own faceplate. As I use here, I use a chunk of beech. I attach that as the faceplate. The products I then turn, which are primarily on here pendants, I fasten onto the front here, which in turn goes onto the backing place. When making pendants, I generally use a round block that's approximately 50mm or 2 inches in diameter. I find that's the right size for a pendant for me. There's two ways of producing this, or two ways that I use. One is either to take a square block, as I have here, and then turn it down to round. Alternatively, to take a block and hold it between two centres and turn that down to round. It all depends on the wood that you're starting with. When I use a block like this, it gives me the end nicely presented. I can sand this up. This will be the back face, the rear of the pendant. I can perhaps put a little embellishment on here. That's just a few lines just to highlight that. I would then chase those through with a skew chisel and then part this off, sand it up and then part it off, so it's held nice and firm within the jaws. And then we can just take the parting tool and just part off a section somewhere around about between 5 and 10mm in thickness. Make that a little wider so that we don't bind. There we go. And now we've got a section that we can use on the jig to turn the other face down. I find the best way to prepare the surface of a pendant is to put a dome on the top here. It doesn't need to be very high, just mainly so that the centre is higher than the edge. The advantage here comes that when we now put embellishments on the surface, I'm just going to do this with a Sharpie rather than any tooling. When we put embellishments on the surface, it will stay towards the centre and stay away from the edges. If I prescribe an arc through there, I'm now going to show the advantage of the faceplate here and move this by 2 positions. If I mark from the same position now, and perhaps one more, you can see that those 3 marks, when tooled using a detail gouge or a skew chisel, would create an almost comet-like pattern there, which is a lovely embellishment onto a simple piece of wood. And because this piece is domed, the marks would only appear on the surface. As the tool came toward the edge and the edge ducked away, you would lose contact with the wood, so you'd be turning air, so you'd only mark out these patterns, and that was created just by rotating 2 holes at a time on the indexing ring. Using a Sharpie and some bits of cardboard on here, I can show that in position 1, naturally we prescribe the standard rotation of the piece. If I move to another position, I'm not going to go through every one. So I've moved this into position 3, I believe now, and we can see now that we're turning off centre. And if I work here, I can find a different arc that we can prescribe. That was even a complete circle there, look. All of these different arcs could then be marked onto the surface of your piece using either small gouge, detail gouge, or skew chisel. I've seen many turnings where each of these separate sections have actually been coloured in using spirits, or using, in fact, just using felt pens seems to work quite well. I've seen them textured. There's seems no end really, you know, just your imagination lets you run wild with this. Okay, so here that just crosses the centre, my wiggly line. If I now rotate on the index by 45 degrees, you see we cross those markings. I can keep rotating this by 45 degrees each time. Slightly out of alignment there, but I went through another routine and was able to prescribe 4 perfect circles that crossed over like so. So any mathematical division using the 24 index points and the 8 eccentric points on the back of the mandrel gives you, I believe it's a 144,000 different combinations with the 24 by 8. Really now it's just down to your imagination, whatever piece you want to mount to the jig and whichever of the combinations you want to use, or combination of the combinations.